This is Miss Boo.
If you ever meet a doctor who refuses to look you in the eyes, leave immediately. Don't wait. Don't ask questions. And whatever you do, don't look in the mirror he gives you. It started in the fall of 2025, when my insomnia became so severe that I genuinely stopped feeling human. After 6 straight days without real sleep, the world started looking thin and fragile, like reality itself was made of cracked glass ready to split apart at any second. I couldn't think properly anymore. I kept hearing sounds that weren't there. Sometimes I'd catch movement in the corner of my vision and turn fast enough to pull muscles in my neck, only to find empty rooms staring back at me. I finally booked an appointment with a neurologist in a quiet suburb of New Jersey. The clinic was located inside one of those old medical buildings that look more like abandoned mansions than doctors' offices. Even during the daytime, the place felt wrong. Too quiet, no traffic outside, no birds, no voices. When I walked in, the silence hit me immediately. The waiting room was completely empty. No receptionist, no television noise, no phones ringing, just rows of chairs and a faint chemical smell hanging in the air. Then I noticed the note sitting on the front desk. "The doctor is in. Please enter directly." Looking back now, I should have left right there, but at that point I was too exhausted to think clearly. I followed the hallway into a small examination room where an elderly man sat behind a desk wearing a perfectly clean white coat. He didn't look up when I entered. He was scribbling something on a notepad with intense concentration. "What's keeping you from sleeping?" he asked in this flat, emotionless voice that sounded almost pre-recorded. As I explained my symptoms, I leaned forward slightly and noticed what he was drawing. It wasn't writing, it was circles. Tiny, overlapping circles drawn over and over again until the paper looked almost burned black with graphite. Thousands of them, layered so densely they barely even looked like shapes anymore. Suddenly, he stopped drawing. Slowly, he looked up at me for the first time. His eyes didn't look human. They looked glossy, dead, like polished marbles pushed into his skull. "Insomnia isn't your problem," he whispered. "Your problem is that you aren't noticing the person sitting next to you." I froze instantly. The room was tiny. There was only one chair, mine. I looked around anyway. Nothing. The doctor let out this dry, rattling laugh that sounded painful to produce. "Of course you can't see him," he said. "He's hiding in your blind spot." Then he opened his desk drawer and removed a small silver mirror. He held it toward me carefully. "Look, and whatever you do, don't blink." I stared into my reflection. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed something moving behind my head. Slowly emerging from the base of my skull was a thin, pale human hand with long blue fingernails gripping the back of my neck from a place I physically could not see. I screamed and threw myself backward onto the floor. The mirror shattered against the wall. When I looked back up, the doctor was calmly drawing circles again like nothing had happened, like I wasn't even there anymore. I ran. I don't even remember reaching my car. I just remember speeding down the highway, shaking so badly I almost crashed twice trying to call the clinic. Eventually, a nurse answered. The second I mentioned Dr. Miller's name, she went silent. Complete silence. Then, very quietly, she said, "Sir, Dr. Miller died in a car accident 2 weeks ago. The clinic has been closed since the funeral." I slowly looked into my rearview mirror. The blue hand was wrapped around my headrest behind me. Its fingers tightened slightly when I noticed it. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I checked into the brightest motel I could find and left every light on until morning. But the hand kept appearing everywhere. In mirrors, in windows, even reflected faintly in my phone screen. The next morning I drove back to the clinic because part of me still needed an explanation. The building was completely abandoned now. Heavy chains wrapped around the front entrance exactly like the nurse described. But the emergency side door was hanging slightly open. Inside, the entire place smelled like dust, mold, and formaldehyde. The furniture was covered in white sheets. Dust coated the floors thick enough to show footprints. No doctor, no circles. Nothing. Then I found a notebook lying near the examination chair. I flipped through page after page of overlapping circles until I reached the back cover. That's where I found the photograph. It was a picture of me entering the clinic the previous day. Clipped underneath it was a handwritten date, 1998, my birth year. Then I heard something wet moving behind the examination curtain. Slow, heavy footsteps, like raw meat dragging across tile. The curtain slowly pulled aside. What stepped out wasn't human anymore. It looked like something unfinished. Exposed muscle twitching beneath a doctor's coat hanging loosely over its body like stolen skin. Its face kept shifting slightly every few seconds like it couldn't decide what it was supposed to look like. "I need your eyes," it whispered through a throat full of static. "Mine are too old." Suddenly I felt this unbearable pressure building behind my eyes, like invisible fingers were trying to force their way into my skull. Then I remembered the mirror. Somehow I still had one broken shard in my jacket pocket. I held it toward the creature. The second it saw its own reflection, it let out a sound so awful I physically felt it inside my teeth. Its body collapsed inward and exploded into thick black dust that coated the walls. I ran again. I thought it was over. But it's been a week now, and something is deeply wrong with me. The insomnia disappeared completely, but so are pieces of my life. I'm forgetting things I should never forget. My childhood address, my mother's face, my own birthday. Old photographs of myself don't even feel familiar anymore. This morning I went into the bathroom and looked in the mirror. I tried to smile, but my reflection didn't move. It just stared back at me with this cold, expressionless face. When I touched the glass, it wasn't solid anymore. It felt thin, soft, like frozen skin stretched over an opening. Behind it, I saw the real Dr. Miller standing inside that dark examination room, pointing directly at my chest. I looked down and realized there was a thin surgical scar running down my sternum. It wasn't there yesterday. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed my own number. I answered slowly and heard my own voice speaking on the other end, sounding happier than I've sounded in years. "Thanks for the body," it said softly. "It's very comfortable. You can stay with Dr. Miller now. He likes the company." The walls around me are changing while I'm recording this. My bathroom is fading. The lights are dimming. I'm sitting in that examination chair again. The door is chained shut from the outside. Dr. Miller just handed me the notebook and the pen. "Start drawing the circles," he said. "It's the only way to keep from losing your mind. If you ever find a clinic that feels a little too quiet, run."
I used to think the monster lived in my grandmother's shed. That's what she told me anyway. "Stay quiet in there," she'd whisper while locking the door behind me. "If it hears you crying, it'll come closer." I was 7 the first time she shoved me inside. By then, I already knew she hated me. Not openly, not in front of other people. In public, Eleanor Vale played the grieving grandmother perfectly after my parents died. Soft voice, gentle smile, fresh cookies on the table whenever social workers visited. But the second the front door closed, she changed. She'd pull my hair when I walked too loudly, hit my knuckles with wooden spoons for touching things. Sometimes she'd stare at me for so long it made my stomach hurt. "You have your mother's eyes," she once told me. I hated her too. The shed became punishment for everything. Too loud? The shed. Too slow? The shed. Crying about my parents? The shed. It sat behind the house near the dead garden, half rotted and leaning sideways like it wanted to collapse. No insulation, no windows, just rusted tools, old blankets, and the smell of mildew and wet dirt. And darkness. Not normal darkness, the kind that looked thick. The first night I met the girl, I thought I was hallucinating. I'd been crying for hours after Eleanor slapped me hard enough to split my lip. I remember sitting on the floor hugging my knees when I heard breathing somewhere in the corner. Then a voice. "Please don't cry." Tiny, pale fingers appeared from the darkness. I froze. A little girl slowly stepped into view, about my age. Thin, barefoot, long black hair hanging over her face. Her wrists were covered in bruises so old they looked stained into the skin. But her eyes, she had the same small freckle in her left eye that I did, the same one my father had. "You can see me?" she whispered. I nodded. "What's your name?" I asked. She looked confused. "I don't remember." So I gave her one. "Mara," I said. "You look like a Mara." She smiled at me like it was the nicest thing anyone had ever done for her. From then on, I stopped fearing the shed. I started looking forward to it. Every night, I'd sneak pieces of bread or crackers into my pockets so we could eat together. We'd draw pictures on the dirt floor with broken chalk stolen from my cousins. Sometimes, she'd ask strange questions. What's outside now? What year is it? Is your father still alive? That question made my chest hurt. No, I said quietly. He died with my mom. Mara went silent after that. Then she whispered, he wasn't supposed to. I asked what she meant, but she wouldn't answer. The longer I knew her, the stranger things became. Whenever she touched me, I got dizzy. Not normal dizzy, wrong dizzy. Like the world tilted sideways for a second. Like something was pulling at me from very far away. And sometimes, she knew things. One night, she told me my aunt was going to die. 3 days later, she collapsed in a grocery store parking lot. Heart attack, 42 years old. After that, I started noticing Eleanor watching me differently, like she was afraid, especially when I talked about the shed. Have you been speaking to someone out there? She asked once, gripping my chin too tightly. No, good, she whispered, but her hand was shaking. That same night, Mara asked me something strange. Do you think people deserve punishment? I shrugged. Bad people do. She looked toward the house. What about murderers? A cold feeling spread through my stomach. Did someone kill somebody? Mara didn't answer immediately. Then she lifted her sleeve. There were deep bruises around both wrists, finger-shaped bruises. She told everyone I ran away, Mara whispered. I felt the air leave my lungs. How long have you been here? She looked confused again. I don't know. Then she asked something that still haunts me. Do you know what happens to children after they die? Before I could answer, the shed door burst open. Eleanor stood there breathing heavily, and for the first time in my life, she looked terrified. Her eyes locked onto Mara. No, she whispered. Mara slowly stood up from the corner. The darkness behind her moved too. Not metaphorically, actually moved, like something alive unfolding itself from the walls. You left me here, Mara said softly. Eleanor stumbled backward. You were never supposed to come back. That's when I understood. Mara wasn't a ghost haunting the shed. She was the reason the shed was haunted. Eleanor tried to run, but Mara grabbed her wrist. The second she touched her, Eleanor screamed. Not from pain, recognition. Like she suddenly remembered something she had spent decades trying to bury. The darkness swallowed both of them before I could move. I still remember Eleanor's voice screaming from inside the shed. I'm sorry, over and over, then silence. Police searched for her for months. They never found a body, but they did find something beneath the shed, tiny bones. A child's skeleton wrapped in an old flower-patterned blanket. The forensic report estimated the remains had been there over 30 years. My father had a sister before me. Her name was Maria Vale. She disappeared when she was 8 years old. Everyone thought she ran away. I know better. Sometimes, late at night, my daughter asks me about the bracelet I wear. The old, faded bracelet made from cheap beads and string. The one I made for Mara. Last week, my daughter looked up from her coloring book and asked, Mom, yeah? Why does the girl in my closet keep asking where Grandma went?
If this story gave you chills, don't forget to subscribe, because the next one might be even worse.